My name's Tom McWhirter. I own the Moray Motor Museum in Elgin. We have several rather nice exhibits, but of course the star exhibit is the ex-Le Mans Lagonda DP115/1. In 1952, David Brown of Aston Martin decided to build a sports car with a V12 engine in order to win Le Mans. The engine was built as an all-alloy unit with 4 overhead camshafts, 3 4-choke Webers, 5-speed gearbox and 300 brake horse. By 1953 the engine was complete and delivered to the race department of Aston Martin. The Lagonda was then tested and proceeded to be raced at Silverstone by Reg Parnell. He finished well, but the car tended to overheat, so the 3-piece grille was opened up to the single piece that is on our car now. Le Mans was then entered to be driven by Eric Thompson and Dennis Poor, and was lying in 10th place when Eric unfortunately spun the car and damaged the rear lights. He could not continue because you're not allowed to run at night without lights, and if you can't repair the car on site, it's end of story. In September, the car returned to Silverstone, driven by Reg Parnell again, wearing race number 41, and managed to finish the race. By 1955, DP115 chassis and body had been scrapped. The Le Mans body was then rescued from Foley scrapyard by the Mason brothers in order to fit to a Tajiro chassis that they had built. They passed the restoration on to their boss Stan Hall, who completed the car with a Zephyr engine. He ran the car for several years, including a trip to Scotland. A phone call from Bob Kerr, then asking me if I'd be interested in restoring a Tajiro chassis with a Le Mans body on it. A quick trip to Birmingham, and the car was changed hands for £3,500 and headed back to the Moray Motor Museum in Elgin. Back in Elgin, my son and I pored over the car for quite a while to ensure it was exactly what it was purported to be, and we then verified that everything was correct. The next thing we had to acquire was a V12 engine. It had been reported that there was one in a 541 Jensen, and 2 years later we managed to locate it in Trowbridge, owned by Stan Hill. Stan agreed to sell me the engine on condition he would come and see the car at the Motor Museum the following year. The decision was made to send the car down to Rod Jolly's to have a toolroom copy chassis built with original drawings from Aston Services. Aston Services supplied us with many parts, including rear axle, gearbox, suspension parts and pedals. Meanwhile, Eric Thompson came down to inspect the body and authenticated that it was definitely the Le Mans body because he had done work on the job himself when the car was at Le Mans. We then passed the car on to Brian Wingfield to complete the wiring, water, brakes, and get the car ready for testing at Snitterton. We then got our entry to the Le Mans Classic, which was great. It was a 2-driver race, so I started off with the running start, which was wonderful. Darren was well up the grid until we got hit with a puncture, and that put an end to the race. Back at the workshop, our restoration man Duncan sorted out the brakes, clutch, cooling and the handling. We were then invited to Goodwood, and great to see Darren actually finished a wonderful third on what was really just a road engine prepared car. We also had the Spirit of Goodwood trophy awarded to us, which was wonderful. The engine was then returned to Crossweight and Garner's to have the compression ratio raised. This was all done, and brake horse was up to 380, but we took it back to 360 to create more torque. This was all completed by Kim, who then had the pleasure of seeing the car win at Goodwood next time out. We were back at Goodwood again, always in the Freddie March race, and ended up with a third, a second and 4 wins, thanks to Darren's consistent driving. This all started in 1982, and after 20 years of trials, tribulations and various hold-ups, we eventually got the car finished. Was it worth it? Difficult to say, but once the car was winning at Goodwood several times, to the delight of many people, it just showed that had the car been properly developed in period, it probably would have won Le Mans or David Brown.